Today, I'm going to tell you the story of how I put my house up as collateral to bail my 17-year-old grandson out of jail for stealing a car, even though his father begged me not to. But what nobody knows is that 2 hours before Eli was arrested, he saved a woman's life and her unborn baby. And when I found a letter hidden in my late husband's desk drawer, I discovered that sometimes God's plans are so much bigger than the families we think we've lost. My name is Catherine Williams. I'm 67 years old. I was a high school principal for 42 years. And this is the story of how I learned that saving someone sometimes means losing the person you love most. It was my last day of work, May 16th, 2023. I stood on the stage at South High School in my navy blazer, looking out at hundreds of faces I'd known across 4 decades. The microphone was cold in my hand. My words echoed through the auditorium. God has plans for you, I told those students. Don't waste tomorrow chasing what doesn't matter. I didn't know I was talking to myself. When I stepped off that stage for the last time, people hugged me. They took pictures. They thanked me for everything I'd done. But when I walked to the parking lot and got into my car, I felt something I hadn't expected. Emptiness. No meetings tomorrow. No students waiting for me. No purpose. I drove home in silence. The house was too big. 4 bedrooms, 3 bathrooms. My husband Isaac had built it with his own hands 40 years ago, before our son David was born, before Isaac got sick, before the kidney transplant that gave us 7 more years together, before he died and left me here alone. I made dinner for one, sat at the table by myself, turned on the television just to hear another voice, and then my phone rang. It was David. "Mom," he said. His voice sounded strange, tight. "Jessica's in labor. The baby's coming early. We're at Highland General." I grabbed my purse and my keys. I was out the door before he finished talking. The hospital was 20 minutes away. I knew every turn, every traffic light. Isaac had worked there for 30 years as a cardiologist. That building still smelled the same, antiseptic and floor wax and something else I could never name. When I walked through those automatic doors, I felt Isaac beside me the way I always did in that place. David met me in the waiting room. He was wearing his scrubs. His dark hair was messy. He looked exhausted. "Mom," he said, "the baby's premature. They're doing everything they can." I squeezed his hand. "Where's Jessica?" "In delivery." He rubbed his face. "They won't let me in yet." We sat in those plastic chairs under fluorescent lights. The waiting room was cold. I could hear machines beeping somewhere down the hall. David kept checking his phone, kept bouncing his knee. I wanted to tell him it would be okay, but I wasn't sure I believed it. 2 hours passed. Then a nurse came out. She had blonde hair pulled back tight. She looked at David. "Your wife is stable," she said, "but the baby has a heart defect. Tetralogy of Fallot. We need to operate as soon as possible." David went white. I stood up and put my hand on his shoulder. "He's going to make it," I said. The nurse looked at me. "There's something else," she said. "Your wife was brought in by a young man. She was in labor in her car. He got her here just in time. Probably saved both their lives." David frowned. "Who?" "We don't know," the nurse said. "The police arrested him. Apparently he was trying to steal the car when he found her." My stomach dropped. I looked at David. "Where is he now?" "Juvenile detention downtown," the nurse said. "He's 17. David shook his head. "Mom, don't." "I need to see him," I said. "Mom, he's a criminal. He was stealing a car. He saved Jessica," I said quietly. "He saved your son. That doesn't change what he did." I didn't argue. I just walked out of that hospital, got back in my car, and drove downtown to the detention center. The building was gray concrete and chain-link fence. I signed in at the front desk, told them I was there to see the boy who helped my daughter-in-law. They made me sit in a waiting room that smelled like sweat and old coffee. 40 minutes passed before they brought him in. When he walked through that door, my heart stopped. He was thin, too thin, dark hair that needed cutting, eyes that looked like they hadn't slept in days. He sat down behind the plexiglass window and picked up the phone, looked at me like he was waiting for me to scream at him. "Hello," I said. "I'm Catherine Williams." He didn't say anything. "You helped my daughter-in-law today," I continued. "The doctor said you saved her life, and the baby's." He shrugged. "I was stealing her car." "I know," I said. "But you stopped. You helped her, and I'm grateful." He stared at me through the glass. Then he said something I didn't expect. "I know who you are." I blinked. "What? Your Grandma Catherine?" He almost smiled. "I'm Eli." I felt the air leave my lungs. I stared at him, at his face, at his eyes that looked exactly like David's, exactly like Isaac's. "Eli," I whispered. He nodded. I hadn't seen my grandson in 3 years. Not since David and Jessica separated. Not since David got full custody and told me that Eli needed discipline, not coddling. Not since David stopped returning my calls when I asked to see my grandson. "What happened to you?" I asked. He looked down. Dad happened. My hands were shaking. I pressed them against the glass. "Eli, where have you been?" "Foster care," he said. "Group homes, the streets." He looked up at me. "Dad gave me up 6 months ago. Said he couldn't handle me anymore." I felt something break inside my chest. "David didn't tell me." "He doesn't tell you a lot of things," Eli said. "I'm going to get you out of here," I said. Eli shook his head. "Grandma, don't. Dad won't let you." "I don't care what your father says," I told him. "You're my grandson, and I'm not leaving you here." I hired a lawyer that afternoon, a woman named Rebecca Chen, who specialized in juvenile cases. I called a bail bondsman, went to court the next morning. The judge was a tired-looking man in his 50s. He looked at Eli's file, looked at me. "Mrs. Williams," he said, "bail is set at $100,000. This young man is a flight risk." "I'll post it," I said. "Ma'am, do you understand what that means?" "Yes," I said. "I'm putting my house up as collateral." Rebecca touched my arm. "Mrs. Williams, are you sure?" I looked at Eli standing there in his orange jumpsuit. "Yes," I said. "I'm sure." I signed the papers that afternoon. 42 years of memories. The house Isaac built. The house where David grew up. The house where Isaac's parents lived before us. I put it all on the line. David found out that night. He showed up at my door at 9 o'clock. His face was red. His hands were shaking. "Mom," he said, "what did you do?" "I helped my grandson," I said. "He's not your responsibility." "He's your son," I said. "How is he not my responsibility?" David stepped inside, closed the door hard. "You have no idea what you've done. He's going to run. He always runs, and you're going to lose everything." "Then I'll lose everything," I said. He stared at me. "Why are you doing this?" "Because you gave up on him," I said quietly. "And someone has to fight for him." David's jaw tightened. "You think I wanted this? You think I wanted to give him up? Then why did you?" "Because I couldn't save him, Mom. I tried. I tried everything. Therapy, counseling, boarding schools. Nothing worked. He kept running, kept stealing, kept getting in trouble. I had to choose between him and Jessica, between him and my career, between him and my sanity." "So you chose yourself," I said. David's eyes went dark. "That's not fair, isn't it?" He turned and walked out, slammed the door so hard the windows shook. I stood there in the silence, and I wondered if I'd just destroyed my relationship with my son to save my grandson. Eli came home with me 2 days later. I gave him David's old room, put clean sheets on the bed, left folded clothes on the dresser. He stood in the doorway like he couldn't believe it was real. "You can stay here," I told him. "But we have rules. You go to your probation meetings, you go to school, and you don't run." "Why are you doing this?" he asked. "Because I love you," I said, "and because I should have done it a long time ago." He looked at me. "Dad's never going to forgive you." "I know," I said. That first week was harder than I expected. Eli barely talked. He'd sit at the kitchen table and stare at nothing. Sometimes he'd recite random facts when he got nervous. "Did you know the human heart beats 100,000 times a day?" he'd say. "Or the average person walks 100,000 miles in their lifetime." It was strange, heartbreaking, but also hopeful. On the third night, I woke up at 2 in the morning. His room was empty. The window was open. My car was gone. I sat on his bed in the dark, and I wondered if David was right, if Eli was always going to run, if I'd risked everything for nothing. He came back at dawn, parked my car in the driveway, walked through the front door like he expected me to call the police. "Where did you go?" I asked. He looked down. "I went to see Mom. Jessica. At the hospital." I waited. I wanted to apologize, he said quietly, for stealing her car, for everything. "Did you?" He nodded. "She said she forgives me." He looked up. "She said I saved her life." "You did," I said. He sat down across from me at the kitchen table. "Grandma," he said, "I don't know how to stop running." "Then I'll teach you," I said. "If you've ever had to choose between your child and your grandchild, leave me a comment. I want to know if I'm the only one who's felt this torn." Over the next 2 weeks, Eli and I built something I didn't expect. A routine, breakfast together, drives to his probation meetings, evenings watching old movies. He started sleeping through the night, started smiling sometimes, started trusting me. David didn't call, didn't come by, didn't answer when I reached out. Then one afternoon, Jessica called me. "Catherine," she said, "can you and Eli come to the hospital? I want him to meet the baby." We drove there in silence. Eli's hands were shaking. "What if Dad's there?" he asked. "Then we'll deal with it," I said. David was there, standing in the hospital room holding his newborn son. He looked up when we walked in. His face went cold. "Mom," he said, "what is he doing here?" "Jessica invited us," I said calmly. David looked at Jessica. She met his eyes. "He saved us, David. He deserves to meet his brother." David's jaw tightened, but he didn't say anything. Eli stepped forward slowly, looked down at the baby. "What's his name?" he asked quietly. "Christopher," Jessica said. She smiled. "Do you want to hold him?" Eli's eyes went wide. "Can I?" Jessica handed him the baby. Eli held Christopher like he was made of glass, looked down at him with something I hadn't seen in his face in years. Wonder. "Hey, little brother," Eli whispered. "I'm sorry I wasn't here when you were born." David turned away. I saw his shoulders shake. That night back at my house, I couldn't sleep. I went to Isaac's office, the room I hadn't cleaned out since he died. I started going through his desk drawers, old files, medical papers. And then I found something wrapped in brown paper at the very back, a letter from Highland General Hospital, dated 17 years ago, from the transplant coordinator. I opened it with shaking hands. It listed Isaac's kidney donor, the person who gave my husband 7 more years of life, the person who let him live long enough to see David graduate medical school. The name on that paper made my heart stop. Richard Castellano. I stared at it, read it again and again. Richard Castellano was Jessica's maiden name, her father. Eli's grandfather on his mother's side. Eli's grandfather had saved Isaac's life. I walked to Eli's room. He was lying on the bed, staring at the ceiling. "Can I come in?" I asked. He sat up. "Sure." I sat beside him, held out the letter. "Eli," I said, "I need to show you something." He took it, read it slowly, then looked at me. "What is this?" "Your grandfather," I said. "Your mom's father. He was the person who donated a kidney to my husband, to your grandfather Isaac. He gave us 7 more years together. He let Isaac live long enough to see your father become a doctor." Eli stared at the letter. "I never met him," he said quietly. "He died before I was born." "I know," I said. "But he saved my husband's life. And now you saved Jessica and Christopher. It's like," I paused, "it's like we've been connected all along. Like God had a plan for our families to be tied together." Eli looked at me. His eyes were wet. "Do you really believe that?" "I do," I said. "I think you were always meant to come home to me." He started crying, and I held him. This boy who'd been abandoned. This boy who'd lost everything. This boy who was my blood. The next morning, David showed up at my door. He looked like he hadn't slept. "Mom," he said, "can we talk?" I let him in. He sat on the couch, put his head in his hands. "I've been a terrible father," he said. I sat beside him, waited. When Jessica and I separated, he continued. I blamed Eli. I told myself it was his behavior that tore us apart. But the truth is, I was never there. I was always at the hospital, always chasing the next promotion, always putting work first. And Eli acted out because he wanted my attention. Any attention. Even if it was me yelling at him. David, I said gently. When it got too hard, he said, when I couldn't fix him, I gave up. I put him in the system. I told myself it was for his own good. But really, I just couldn't face my own failure. You're not a failure, I said. He looked at me. Then why does it feel like I am? Because you're human, I said. And humans make mistakes. But it's not too late. He wiped his eyes. I found out what Eli did. How he saved Jessica. How he could have run, but he didn't. How he stayed and helped her, even though he knew he'd get arrested. I nodded. And then Jessica told me about the letter you found. About her father. About the kidney. David shook his head. It's like God was trying to tell me something. Like he was showing me that our families have been connected all along. That Eli was always supposed to come back to us. Yes, I said. David looked at me. I'm sorry, Mom. For shutting you out. For not letting you see him. For making you choose between us. You're my son, I said. I'll always love you. But Eli needed me. And I couldn't turn my back on him. I know, David said. Thank you for being stronger than I was. 3 weeks later, we stood in court together. Eli in a suit I'd bought him. David beside me. Jessica holding Christopher in the back row. The judge looked at Eli. Looked at the file. Looked at me. Mrs. Williams, he said. This is highly irregular. I know, Your Honor, I said. But given the circumstances, and given the support system this young man now has, I'm suspending his sentence. 3 years probation, no jail time. Eli turned and hugged me. David put his hand on Eli's shoulder, and for the first time in 3 years, I saw my son and my grandson stand together. That night we had dinner at my house. All of us. David and Jessica and Christopher and Eli and me. We sat around the table Isaac had built. We ate the pot roast I'd learned to make from Isaac's mother. And we talked. Really talked. For the first time in years. Eli told stories that made us laugh. David apologized again. Jessica cried happy tears. Christopher slept in his carrier, peaceful and perfect. And I looked around that table and realized something. When I stepped off that stage at South High, I thought my purpose was over. I thought my life was winding down. But God had other plans. Sometimes losing everything is the only way to gain what matters most. Sometimes the end of one chapter is just God preparing you for the next. And sometimes the family you thought you lost is just waiting for you to fight for them. Before Isaac died, he gave me a compass, an old brass one his father had given him. On the back, he'd engraved a Bible verse. Trust in the Lord with all your heart, and lean not on your own understanding. I gave that compass to Eli the day he moved back in with me. He keeps it on his dresser now, right next to a photograph of Isaac, right next to his probation papers, right next to his acceptance letter to community college, because that's what faith is. Not knowing the whole plan, not understanding why things happen the way they do, but trusting that God's compass always points true, even when we're lost, even when we're scared, even when we have to choose between the people we love most. If this story touched you, subscribe to the channel and share it with someone who needs to hear it. Sometimes a story like this can help someone who's going through the same thing. And if you've ever had to risk everything to save someone you love, I'd love to hear your story in the comments below. My name is Catherine Williams. I'm 67 years old, and I've learned that God's greatest gifts sometimes come wrapped in our biggest fears. All we have to do is be brave enough to unwrap them.